I came to you and showed you some supermarket flowers which I bought on my Facebook stories, and I was going to show you how you could display them in your house. I couldn't find the vase I wanted to use to show you the chicken wire method, so I've had to revert to this little Hessian pot which is lined with plastic. I've soaked some Oasis in here, and I don't need all of this here, so I'm going to take off this top part of the Oasis with a knife. Oasis is what's going to give your flowers the moisture that they need to drink. I don't need this piece, I'm just going to discard it for the moment. I've put a tea towel on my table here because I don't want the water to damage the table. I wouldn't normally work in this environment, but whilst my workshop isn't up and running, I'm having to. So these supermarket flowers, I've got quite a selection of flowers, but one thing I do lack, or I do find is lacking in supermarket flowers, is foliage, and I love foliage. So this is the only piece of foliage I've got at the moment. So I'm going to see how I'm going to utilise this, and I'm going to count my flowers. So I've got quite a good little selection here, although some of them are a little bit past their best, if I'm honest. They're quite soft. This rose is quite open, this one's a little bit closed up still. And I've got another one here. So 3 roses, 3 antirrhinums, but they're very small, snapdragons, 3 chrysanthemums, and 3 bicolour carnations. I've got that variegated tip on the end, and then one lily stem. So I'm going to start off by placing a flower in the centre here. The reason I'm using this method of cutting these flowers quite short is because when the flowers are past their best and you want them to live for a little bit longer, if you cut the stem shorter, the water has less distance to travel to the flower, so it helps them last a little bit longer. I'm going to place this one directly into the middle. Now I'm going to make this arrangement about double the height of the container. And the reason I'm using my lily centrally is because I've only got one of them. I'll just put my rubbish to one side for now. So normally what I like to do is place my foliage in first and then nestle my flowers into it, but unfortunately we haven't got much foliage. So what I'm going to try and do is create something with more flowers and less foliage. This rose is quite open, and I've got 3 of these. As you can see on the back, they're a little bit damaged, some of the petals. So I'm going to take off these damaged petals just by gently twisting them off. It hasn't got a fragrance to it. And I'm going to cut it quite short. I'm going to cut it a little bit shorter than that still. And because I've got 3 of these, I'm going to place them in like a Y formation in the arrangement. So one here, if I turn this around, I'm going to place one here and one here. So when you cut the stems of your flowers, cut them at an angle, because that will allow you to insert them easier into the Oasis, because they've got a bit of a point on them. And when you're cutting them, try and avoid cutting by the node on a stem of the flower. Let me see if I've got one that shows you better. On this one. You see where the leaf is growing out from the side of the stem, that's like a node there. You don't want to cut there because it's easier for a plant to drink if you cut above or below a node. A flower to drink, I should say. Place this one in. When I place them into the Oasis, I'm making sure that I hold the flowers like a pencil at the bottom of the stem, because what I don't want to do is I don't want my stem to bend as I'm inserting it into the Oasis. So using my fingers, holding it, take this leaf off, holding it like a pencil and then placing it into the position I want it to go in. So what you've got here, what you can see here, if I hold it this way, is that the flowers are sort of creating like a triangular effect. And then what that leaves me with is a space in between to add different types of flowers and foliage. What you can do if you want to is also utilise some of the stems of the roses that have got some pretty leaves on if you want to. So I've just cut that down a little bit, and I can utilise that as a bit of foliage around the edge just to soften it, and hopefully I'll have a little bit more on this one. And I can perhaps put that next to a rose, because you'd expect to see a rose leaf next to a rose flower. You wouldn't expect to see it next to a carnation. And now what I'm going to do here is add my my next biggest flower in the gaps. So these are my chrysanthemums. If you're unsure about how long to cut them, err on the side of caution and cut the stem slightly longer. You can always cut a little bit more off if you need to. Once you've cut it off, you can't add it back on. You can see that this flower's getting a little bit past its best because some of its petals are a little bit damaged. I don't want to pull them off because I'm just concerned that they might actually shatter the flower and then they might all fall off. So I'm just going to place that one. I need to cut that slightly shorter, again at an angle. I'm going to place that in between the roses. I've got 3 of them. So again, just adds. This is an all-round arrangement, so what we're doing is we're creating the look from all sides, so that no matter what side you view it from, you can actually see some flowers. It's not front-facing arrangement. You'd use a front-facing arrangement if you were putting it on perhaps a sideboard in a hallway where you don't need to see the back, but this could go nicely on a coffee table. Again, because I haven't got much foliage in here in this bunch, what I might actually do is where I've cut this flower, I don't know if you can see here, there is, put my hand behind it, it's probably not easy to see, there's a bit of an ugly part here, can you see it? And then this stem, this leaf comes out of the stem here. I'm just going to nip that little top bit off, just so that when I put this into the arrangement as a piece of foliage, I don't get a little stubby part of the stem on the top. Cutting these quite small, because all I really want to do is just place them in gently in between the flowers to try and hide some of my mechanics. The mechanics on this occasion is the oasis. It's what holds your flowers into the pot. So if I was using the other method, which I said earlier, the chicken wire would be my mechanic. So just popping that in there. Got another piece here if I want to use it in a minute. I don't particularly like this foliage, but if we have to use it, we will. It's it looks like a piece of laurel. So I have got 3 antirrhinums here, which are past their best, but we'll just, for the purpose of this demonstration, we'll use them today. Again, holding them at the bottom, I'm going to place them above the roses at a diagonal angle to the lily to create a little bit of a profile on this arrangement. So, and it actually acts like as a transition from this, needs to go in a little bit more, from this height down and then down to the edge of the container. So if I can get in there carefully, poke it in a little bit more, there, I'll turn it around. Now, because this is an oasis, you will need to water it from time to time, because if the oasis gets dry, it draws moisture out of the flowers, and that will inhibit them to continue to live. That will, you know, dry them out and they will die quicker. I don't expect this to last too long because the flowers weren't in prime condition when I bought them. It didn't help that I was going to do it yesterday and left my heating on all night and forgot. So my own fault really. So I've positioned those in, and all I've really got left flower wise are these 3 carnation blooms. So I'm going to put those in the gaps that are left. But in the meantime, I'm going to use some of this chrysanthemum to act as a little bit of foliage coverage for my oasis. So I've cut that piece into 2 pieces, and I'm going to pop it in when there's a bit of a gap. That's better, just covering it up a bit. When I work with flowers, I like to use as much foliage as I can, because I actually feel that that creates a really nice backdrop for your arrangement. And when the flowers start to die, as they do, the foliage will, you know, still continue to thrive, because that tends to be a little bit hardier. And then as you're removing the dead flowers, which is recommended to do from a vase as they're dying, to stop the bacteria from growing in the vase, if you've got quite a bit of foliage in there, then actually the arrangement doesn't look too sparse. So on this carnation, you can see there's quite a clear node here. It's the bobbly part of the carnation. And what we want to do is, because we're using the oasis, is we want to overcut below or above these nodes. Obviously, if I cut above this node, it's going to be quite small to pop into here. So I'm going to cut down here. And then I'm going to just feed it in. That's quite long. I don't need it that long. Remember, once you've placed a flower in the oasis, you're going to create a hole in the oasis. So it's not very forgiving in that respect. So if I was you, I would be very mindful as to where you're going to place your flowers. Try and, you know, think about that before you start stabbing them in and out, because once you've taken them out of that hole, you don't really want to use that hole again, because there'll be no oasis touching the stem of the flower for it to absorb water. And the oasis does sort of disintegrate if you're putting things in and out all the time. Because it's very tempting to buy flowers from the supermarket and just to bung them in a vase, and that's absolutely fine if that's what the look that you like. But if you're really interested in flowers and want to have perhaps thinking of having a go at doing flower arranging yourself, then why not grab yourself a nice little bunch, buy some oasis. Seen it recently sold in the places like the Range. Your local garden centre might have some for sale, or go to your local florist and buy some. And it just gives you an opportunity then to have a little practice and do something a little bit different. So I'm going to use a bit of this, I think, in here. And I'm going to go for this end piece because it's nice and shiny and it's new growth and it's quite clean. And I think that will just add to this if I place that directly in the middle there. Just a little bit of foliage. Careful not to break any of the buds off of your lily. Just give it a little jiggle about a little bit. That's it. And let me move away my rubbish. And there we have it. We have transformed quite a cheap and cheerful supermarket bunch of flowers. Let me just clear this away. Into something a little less ordinary, something nice for your coffee table and something to enjoy for a few days. I'd like to know what you think about this. If you're interested in having a go yourself, I do run workshops from time to time. I'm new to the Southport area, so my workshop is actually being built as we speak, well, being designed as we speak, so it's not up and operational at the moment here. But if you or a group of friends want to get together and have a little go at doing something like this, then drop me an email at info@bloomsbyjulie.co.uk. And I'll be more than happy to have a little chat about what we could do, especially if you're a flower lover like me and you want to have a little go yourself. So I can be found on Facebook, Instagram, Blooms by Julie. You can email me at info@bloomsbyjulie.co.uk, or you can have a look at my website, which is www.bloomsbyjulie.co.uk. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this mini tutorial.